What's up everybody, it's Julian. Today I'm going to be showing you how to do hard house like Megra and Tommy Holohan. To go along this video, you can grab the template from this video in my sample pack Ultimate Hard House. It's the sample pack with 5 kits here, Ableton files, as well as the individual loops, MIDI, and presets, and the samples. Everything you need to make hard house, link in the top of the description, and let's get started. Alright, so we're at 145 BPM. First thing we got here is this respace. So what's going on here is we're going to keep A minor, right? This is kit 5 from the pack, and we're using A, F, C. So if you look at this musically, it's root, 6th, minor 3rd, right? We're in A minor, and then we're basically just adding notes from the scale up here. Like, okay, for example, this, we're just kind of walking up. You can see it's the 9th and then the 3rd, and then I put those up an octave. In this case, it's just an octave of the F. Here we have another C, but then I put that B, which is, again, that 9th there. So we're kind of playing around with pretty simple voices, right? But it's just doing a lot with very little. Now, for the sound on this one, it's made with Wavetable. We have 2 layers, so I have this one. I'll turn off all the effects first and just show you what it sounds like. Right, so this one you can hear is pretty unison out. What it is, it's a saw wave and then a square wave. This is actually a secret I like to use for these reces, is using a square wave on the unison layer instead of a saw, because it sounds kind of nice, and then you blend it with the saw, and then the square is like a bit quieter, right? We have a low pass filter here with like a nice bit of resonance. Where you put this filter is very important. It seems simple, like just low pass filtering saw waves, but you got to spend a lot of time dealing with that, and it really depends on where your notes are on the MIDI as well, right? So what I've done here is I've set this, and then I brought the resonance up, and then I've got a key tracking on here. Right, so you see the filter goes up on those higher notes. That's what the key tracking is. It just says the higher the note is, the more open the filter will be. We got a bit of chorus on here, and you can see all the unison we have. And then on the second layer, it's the same thing, just with no unison. And then just saw waves. Because for this layer, I think just saw waves sounds good. You can see they're detuned a lot, though, in opposite directions. And then you put them together. Then we got a bit of saturation, which was actually, you can hear it's clipping a little bit coming out of the audio effect track. But then you put it into this. Right, and it kind of hits the saturation nice. I have this on medium curve, and you can see I'm playing around with the color here, and then we're bringing it up a little bit in the low mids. This thing is actually very sensitive. Like, if you play around with it, you can see. Right, you can get a lot of different sounds, so just putting that there does a lot. Then I actually compress this, so here's without that. With it. It seems subtle, but when I bring it into the whole mix without the compression, you can hear. The bass level is really kind of messing with the mix a bit, so if you compress it and kind of flatten it out, so you get that steady bass response the whole way through. This is honestly a lot of compression. Like, I wouldn't normally do this. It worked here, you know. This isn't a super dynamic sound, right? Like, this is something you want to be very flat. It's not like drums. I feel like part of the reason why compression and drums get so messy is because you want drums to be punchy, but you also want them to be compressed. This, you don't need punch. You just want it to be super compressed. I've then put it through this auto pan to make it sound sidechain. I've converted the bass to mono with a utility. Pretty important also with these, right? And then we actually have a little bit of a low pass at the end, just cutting off some high end. And then we have the drums. So the drums are going to be pretty simple. With a lot of hard house, it really is just like getting this. Right? Like, I got this big 909 kick. You can see I tuned it to fit the key. I've also got this hi-hat, which is really short. So it's going to sit right on top of the mix. Right? And then this big clap. You see I got a pedal on there, so it just turns into that huge. Right, and then these drums on their own aren't really doing all of it, but then the hard house thing is you're going to bring in some of these rave loops. For some groove. These are some of mine from, I believe, one of my hard groove packs, actually. And what you're doing is these kind of fill these out. Because, like, if you listen, these drums are meant to just be really hard and punchy. But, like, the hi-hat, for example, is really short, right? So then you bring in this loop. See, and now it kind of gives you a more full hi-hat. Or, like, this one. So yeah, it's really one of those genres where you need to layer these loops up. Because then also, it's like just one of these on its own doesn't really do it. You need all three to really stack up and fill out that groove. So that's what we're doing there. And then I've got this lead. So what we're doing here is this kind of like grooving pattern, right, where we're walking up the scale. But what it's doing is it's actually starting on the 5th, right? All these down here are E, which is the 5th, and then it goes 1, 9, 3, 9. So the same two voices I was using for the melody and the respace too. And then with this one, it's really that groove. So for this, we're using wavetable. I have this pulse dual here, and then I also have this AEIOU wavetable. You can see I've got the amp envelope on this low pass filter here. We got a bit of noise unison. Then we kind of move over here. We got a bit of resonator, so here's without it. With it, right, kind of gives it more texture. A bit of chorus. Some echo, some reverb, an EQ to just cut out a little bit of like low end around where the bass was, and then some drum bus. Actually, it brought back drum bus here. Here's without it. With it, it's obviously making it a bit louder, but if I turn up the dry signal, you can still hear. Right, this is really nice at the end for something like this where you do want a lot of texture and you want to kind of bring out that reverb and delay and just give it a bit more flavor. We got the auto pan to sidechain it to the kick, and then we move down to this lead. So yeah, we got this kind of like trancing lead, right? You hear these a lot in the Tommy Holohan tracks, especially. What we're doing here is, again, just playing with a lot of these same voices, like 5. Here now we're going up to the 7th, and then the root. Here we've got a 4th, 3rd, 9th, right? So it's like just different kind of like ways of voicing this scale, and then you put it against all this other melodic stuff. Right, and it creates something that's going to add a lot of energy and melodic content to the track. And then it's also playing with these note lengths. So you can get that kind of pattern. For this thing, it's about also like having the release really short on the synth. So for the synth here, we got 2 layers. There's this one. And I'll turn off all the effects really quick so you can just hear it out of the synth. So it's this transistor saw with the phase sync unison, and then I layered it with this, which is this Malice wavetable with the shimmer unison. So yeah, wavetables can be a good thing for leads if you don't make them too crazy. Like, I don't have a whole lot of LFO moving this around. It's not doing too much. It's just like sitting in one place and then some unison to kind of smooth it out, layer 2 together. And it just sounds like something very cool from like a saw wave. Then we got a bit of echo. Not too much, right? Because it'll mess up the track. And hard house, you want it to be punchier and not so ambient. Then we have this audio effect track. So this is essentially multiband distorting the lead. What we're doing is we're keeping these lows, which really just means no lows. and then we're distorting the mids. And the highs separately. And then you get this. So you get this very full, kind of like punchy, saturated synth without it. Right, and it also adds a lot of texture, and it brings out the delay too. Like I put the delay before this, and then the delay is a bit like more dry, but then this brings it out a lot, right? And then we get this auto pan to make it bounce off the kick, and then the last layer is going to be the pad. So this is basically just playing this chord progression kind of in the background. This is one thing with a lot of the hard houses, like, or like trance even, is like you might have your real chord progression on the bass, and then these melodies kind of going with it. Right, but then you can have some chord melody in the background like this. Right, like it's kind of just on its own. It's still super in key though, right? Like it's just playing A minor, C major, F major, G major. Like it's, you know what I'm saying? It's just simple stuff in the key, but it adds something nice in the background. Now, for the sound on this one, it's made with wavetable. It's this 2-VIN wavetable, and then just a little bit of a triangle wave. I've got a low pass filter, and then you can see there's an envelope on that. It kind of never closes, basically. And then we have a little LFO on each of the oscillator shapes. I've got some noise unison, and then I'll show you what this sounds like just straight out of the synth. Right, so pretty fat, but then we have the spectral blur. It's really subtle, but you can hear it's a good way to kind of put this in like a cloud and kind of blur it out a little bit. We got a bit of reverb, which also does the same. A high pass filter, and then a bit of auto pan to make it bounce off the kick. And that's going to be it for this one, guys. So, I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you get this full video at the top of the description on my website. Make sure to go check that out. Thank you for the support, everybody.